Howdy everyone. I'm a father and I'm a teacher, and these numbers frighten me, and you'll see why. This is the game of Go, an ancient Asian game like chess, but far more complex. This is Lee Sedol, at that point in time, the best Go player who ever lived. This is a piece of software developed by DeepMind, now part of Google. 2 years ago, they played a historic match of 5 sessions. And at that point in time, Lee Sedol was widely expected to win and win easily. He won 1 out of only 5 matches. His defeat sent shockwaves through the community of Go players and that of artificial intelligence experts. You see, AlphaGo Lee was designed by DeepMind to play Go, and it was trained by humans. Humans trained it by feeding it 30 million moves from high-quality Go games. And on the y-axis, you see the rating of a Go player. So within about 3 weeks of launch, AlphaGo Lee was able to achieve and match the level of performance of Lee Sedol, at that point in time, the best human Go player. So that was an incredible inflection point of a piece of software exceeding a human person in an extremely complex effort, in this case, playing the game of Go. But wait, it gets worse for humans. You see, a few months later, DeepMind released a new version of that software called AlphaGo Zero. Zero means it required no human training. It required no data of previous Go matches. It was simply fed the rules of the game of Go and allowed to play against itself many, many times. And then when it was pitted against its predecessor software, AlphaGo Lee, within 3 days, it defeated AlphaGo Lee 100 games to none. And that was announced on October of last year. That's why these numbers haunt me. More than that, the nature of AlphaGo, the software, was strangely alien. Experts at the game of Go and artificial intelligence experts both commented on how the way this piece of artificial intelligence approached the game of Go was so incredibly strange that it was so counterintuitive to what humans believed was the best way of playing this game. And the article released last October mentioned that it was quite possible to achieve superhuman levels of performance without human intervention, without human training. This, to me, is frightening. Because more than just playing a board game, this engine of intelligence, namely machine learning, a form of artificial intelligence, is embedded in a variety of products that I bet many of us today used today. Many of you recognize Facebook, Gmail, Waze. Some products are more esoteric, like ROS, AI built for the legal industry. Each of these products now have become indispensable, irresistible to our daily lives, and many of them promise to do more than humanly possible. And so I mentioned I'm a teacher. I'm also a parent. Why does this scare me? It's because I think about my students that I teach and my own 2 sons. And I also wear another hat. Before being a teacher, before being a parent, I was a human resources professional. I worked for large companies. And my job was to identify talent, human talent, around the world, and bring them into the company, develop them, and then deploy them around the world to serve the mission of the company. Back then, the talent was always human. Today, employers have a choice: human talent and machine talent. And so I think about this trend and I ask myself, what will my students have to contend with when they begin to work in the professional world? What do my own 2 sons have to contend with? So frequently, I ask my students and my 2 sons, why would an employer hire you instead of buying a piece of software? Software do not call in sick. They don't sleep. They don't threaten to sue you if you mistreat them. Even better, overnight, when you're asleep as an employer, they upgrade overnight. So I asked my 2 sons, Javier and Fabian, Why would an employer pay you a salary and benefits and vacation and your development when they can turn on or turn off at will a piece of software? That's why this is extremely relevant to me as a father and to as a teacher. So I believe in order for our youngsters to be prepared to thrive and compete in the knowledge world when they graduate from college is to develop some capabilities that are rather uncomfortable for humans to develop, such as embracing that which is ambiguous and complex. That's very uncomfortable. We want to make things simple. So asking us to embrace that which is complex is asking a great deal of us. Learning to learn and to unlearn also is very uncomfortable. Because for many of us, especially as we acquire age and intelligence and knowledge, we begin to identify with that which we know. We take pride in being knowledgeable. So can you imagine asking someone with an advanced degree or advanced set of knowledge that maybe what you know is no longer relevant? Would you be willing to discard that knowledge and with it a large part of who you are and your self-image, your self-esteem? That's very uncomfortable. And we are a country that celebrates individual accomplishment. Just watch your typical Hollywood movie. It's usually one person, usually male, that saves the world. But we have to embrace collective creativity. So it's not enough just to be creative individually, but even more powerful and more needed is our ability to help other people work together and be collectively creative. So I believe our youngsters need to develop these forward-facing capabilities. Let's think about how our youngsters are brought up in the family and then at school. Those environments are structured, predictable, reassuring, and comfortable, as they ought to be. We need that very structured and reassuring nest to develop our young human beings. So it's absolutely necessary and good. But as we just mentioned, our young people need to begin to embrace that which is not so predictable or structured or comfortable. Why? Well, because you can think of the nature of work as having a continuum. This side, that nature of work is very well known to human beings. An example would be what's almost tax filing deadline. So how many of us actually go to a human being to do taxes now? I think very few of us. Widely available for about $20 or even free, you can buy software that has embedded in it the collective human knowledge of how to complete a tax return for a federal government. So that nature of work is so well known by human beings, it can be codified, which by definition means it can be reduced to computer code. On the other extreme, the nature of work is so unknown that we call that mysterious. And somewhere in the middle are the rest of what we do. So some examples. Running a large company, being a CEO of a company. We have some principles of how to be a good manager and how to run a company, but we also rely on lesser definite guidelines called heuristics, which means rules of thumb, large, vague rules of thumb, such as when you have a big problem, you can't solve it, solve a smaller, similar problem. The rules of thumb, which belies the fact that we don't know much about how to do that work. Another example, dating, finding a lifelong partner. Some principles, lots of heuristics, and also some mystery. How about being a parent? A lot of principles, a lot of heuristics, and some mystery. How about raising a teenager? That's mystery and maybe beyond that, like miracle, right? So this is the span of that which we know. So my belief is that our youngsters must embrace and be able to handle work that is less well-defined, to stay one step ahead of artificial intelligence. And you might be shocked to learn that much of artificial intelligence can already handle some very ambiguous tasks, such as recognizing human emotions by simply watching for different combinations of facial features. That I would put down as being part of principles and heuristics. Already, artificial intelligence is capable of doing that. So our youngsters, my students, my two sons, they have to stay one step ahead of AI, which is by the day almost mastering more and more complex and ambiguous work. So when and where do our youngsters today in a typical classroom get these opportunities? Probably not enough. By nature of schools, They are highly structured, as they ought to be able to scale them and reproduce them and provide high-quality education at reasonable cost. Schools must be well-structured with syllabi, courses, grades, schedules, and calendars. But let's think about that. The very nature of school is highly structured. So how likely is it that our youngsters will develop those forward-facing skills? If you think about the traditional classroom, you have an expert at the front of the classroom with knowledge to impart, and students largely passive. We have to go way beyond that. And most teachers already do project-based learning. But many of our project-based learning projects entail a solution that the teachers already know, and teachers are orchestrating the experiences for students to arrive at that well-known answer. I believe we must embrace a more extreme version of project-based learning called challenge-based learning. Apple Computers wrote about this type of challenge about 9 years ago. In this type of project-based learning called challenge-based learning, the teacher does not know the answer, does not know the solution to solving a problem. Maybe no person on earth knows the solution. So it's a very different type of experience when the students realize, oh my goodness, you mean there is no answer in the back of the book that Mr. Han knows? Wait, you mean maybe no one knows this? And so challenging youngsters and drawing them into this vacuum can be enormously powerful, instilling in them this sense of agency, of powerfulness. Typical classroom for 4 years in high school looks a bit like this. The subjects or disciplines are introduced to students according to a time frame and in different silos. You may have STEM, the humanities, the fine arts, and then maybe the technical arts. And then over the course of 4 years, students enjoy some hands-on projects. And if they're really lucky, these projects go beyond any one discipline. So instead of merely a robotics or STEM-based project, maybe students can combine art with STEM to create a STEAM project. These are great, but I believe we need to do a lot more than this. So in my proposal, which looks almost completely upside down, the backbone are not the disciplines, but rather a real-world project to help a distinct population meet the challenges of their world. It could be going to a developing community. It may be in our own community, in alleviating poverty and homelessness. It's about embracing a particular population of protagonists, understanding how they face their world, understanding what challenges they face, and then beginning to solve the problems along with them. And then as the students progress in solving this real-world problem, introduced to them, made available to them, are the different disciplines in small, manageable chunks, just in time and just in context. They aren't introduced to a tool before it is relevant to solving that problem. So if you compare the traditional with my upside-down school proposal, it looks almost exactly opposite and backwards and upside down in every respect. The upside-down school, by definition, is integrated across the different disciplines. It is just in time, just in context, and it's focused, by definition, on the real-world problems, not teaching to the test, which I am guilty of as an AP physics teacher. So in the essence, instead of pushing knowledge information to students without proper context, the students are immersed and have invested their emotions in solving a problem. And then they want to find solutions. They want to find knowledge tools to solve that problem. So rather than we teachers pushing, the students are pulling this information from the surroundings. This is the Ebbinghaus Curve, which many teachers experience firsthand. This is a student learning something and within days, sometimes within hours, forgetting it. Who can blame them? It's to them irrelevant without proper context. I do it too. I will forget within hours, maybe even minutes. So it's a highly inefficient way of teaching, of developing our youngsters. I'll give an example of a very different way of learning. My son Javier, when he was 15 years old, developed an invention to create a way to take warm, humid air and produce fresh drinking water by coaxing the warm air to go underground where it's very cold, and the water vapor, by meeting the cold ground, condenses into droplets of clean water. But he needed to find out how long this conduit, this pipe, needed to be underground to produce 4 liters of clean water per day. So he realized that he had to estimate, and he realized that the conditions at the beginning of this conduit and the end will be different, because as the warm air, humid air, begins to condense, its percent of water vapor falls, and its temperature rises. And the ground does reverse. The ground temperature rises after having condensed water from water vapor. So he realized that he had to do estimates. He also realized that the finer the increment he cut into making estimates, the more accurate the estimate. At that point in time, he realized he needed a tool called calculus. Imagine if all of our youngsters learned these knowledge tools in that contextual way, where they are motivated to solve a problem in real life, and they draw from the environment a tool that is instrumental to solving the problem they care about. That would be a very different world. So, in Upside Down School, we have disciplines, and we have a focus point called design thinking. This is based on the Stanford Design School, a 5-step sequence about first empathizing with a population of protagonists, understanding their world, their challenges, and then defining specific problems they face, generating ideas, prototyping them, testing, and refining. So this is the lens through which I believe my school should use. And then we bring in the traditional disciplines of STEM, humanities, fine arts, technology, but also something I called renewal and relevance, these forward-facing skills we talked about a few minutes earlier. These are rather unnatural and rather uncomfortable, but I believe it's instrumental to being effective in surviving against AI. So, one project. What are the projects? Here are some examples. I propose youngsters first solve a local problem at their school to improve their school. When they get better, they move on to solving a problem at a local nonprofit, maybe the animal shelter. After that, they move on to something even more significant, helping a local for-profit business, maybe a donut shop. And then, after they've had that experience, they will embrace a large project, which I call the magnum opus project, a great work. For that, I propose alleviating poverty in their local city or town. Poverty is extremely complex. Many, many interconnected factors conspire to make it difficult to address. So I believe is a worthy challenge for our youngsters to embrace. So over the course of 4 years, a sequence of different projects to give our students a variety of challenges. And the framework is, as you see, all tied together by the design thinking model from Stanford Design School. So this whole model is inspired by the maker movement, like Maker Fair in San Francisco every May. Also, the innovation incubators who are designing and developing new products for commerce, and then the Stanford Design School. So what's next? This, what I'm proposing to you, is very, very risky, right? So we can start small. Try this maybe during the summer break, maybe after school, maybe on weekends. And we would not replace our current existing education system, but simply overlay small increments of this idea on top of that education model. Yes, we are on the leading edge. I thank you for your time, and I welcome your conversation about the Upside Down School. Thank you.